Welcome to Leadership Moments.
In every great leader's life, there are pivotal moments that shape their character, test their resilience, and awaken their vision.
Together, we'll uncover the invaluable lessons hidden within these transformative moments.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Leadership Moments podcast. I'm Tracy Ann Palmer, and I'm joined with my fabulous co-host, Stacey Costa. And today we're diving into a topic that sits at the heart of effective leadership, and that is delivering value. And we're going to explore how leaders define value, why it matters, and how to distinguish it from mere activity. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to my fabulous co-host, Stacey.
Thanks, Tracy Ann. Appreciate it. Love being here always with you. It's always so much fun. And as Tracy Ann mentioned, today we're talking about the difference between creating value and just being busy. Too often leaders find themselves caught up in the whirlwind of activity, making mistakes all the time of on progress over perfection, and how do we actually move forward? And activity can be a problem sometimes when you're actually not achieving things and delivering that value. But not every action leads to impact, right? And not every task adds value. So let's dig in and uncover what truly defines value in leadership.
Yeah, and Stacey, that's such a great point. I think starting at the beginning, which is what is value, right? And, for many, the word value might immediately bring to mind numbers and profit margins and revenue growth and cost reductions, because that's automatically where your brain goes. But value in leadership goes way beyond the financials. It includes impact, how your leadership contributes to the growth of the organization, the well-being of your team, the community, as well as even fostering an environment where people thrive and where innovation really flourishes.
Yeah, that's actually a really great point. And value can be tangible, like financial performance, or intangible, like team morale or company culture. One of the key things is that leaders need to identify what constitutes value in their unique role. For example, in a startup, might mean rapid innovation, agile decision making, whereas a large corporation, it could mean ensuring sustainable growth and maintaining a strong brand reputation. The key is alignment, aligning your actions with the strategic goals of the organization and the needs of your stakeholders. That's what helps with value.
Yeah, that's right. And, talking about organization and stakeholders, when boards and CEOs evaluate their leaders, they're expecting them to deliver value across several critical areas, right? And we've identified, Stacey and I have identified these 5 value indicators, which I think is important for everybody to know. One is this area of financial performance. So we're expected to drive sustainable growth and profitability, number one. But this also includes, hitting our revenue targets, managing those costs effectively, ensuring a healthy balance sheet. Those are all indicators. And we do that through, revenue growth, EBITDA, profit margins, ROI, earnings per share. And then, those sort of are what I call the common metrics to assess financial performance, right? When we go a little further, we think about uh, what is effective leaders demonstrating through that? Well, we're demonstrating that we can meet the company's financial objectives in a consistent manner.
Yeah, those are really great points. And let's talk about two critical areas of strategic vision and execution. Boards and CEOs expect leaders to articulate a compelling vision for their teams and execute on strategies that align with the organization's long-term goals. It's kind of leadership 101, right? You need to be able to do that. And success in this
That's
area
right.
is often measured by progress against strategic objectives, successful completion of key initiatives, and market share growth, and the ability to anticipate and respond to market trends. This includes launching new products, entering new
Okay.
markets, or successfully implementing transformational projects. Another area is leadership and talent development as well. Effective leaders build high performing teams, develop future leaders, and foster a culture of continuous improvement. You know, Team member engagement scores, retention rates, diversity and inclusion metrics, and succession planning outcomes are critical factors that you all have to take into consideration. And strong leaders are recognized for their ability to inspire, motivate, and retain top talent while developing the next generation of leaders within the organization. All of these things have to come into play.
Yeah, and Stacey, on this one area of the diversity inclusion, so that talent development, many companies at that C-level executive and VP level have these metrics in place where their bonuses are impacted if they don't hit those targets. Now, interesting, we're not going to talk about this today, but interesting that there have been recent reports of those going away. Something that I found really interesting, something for us to dive into. But again, subject for another day. I just wanted
Yeah, I think
to
that's another
mention that.
episode for us because you're right. DEI is a whole thing that's changing, and companies are doing metrics. Some companies are completely taking away. We've heard about roles being taken away. So, all right, that's a future episode for sure.
Yeah, that's right. So let's move on. So the next critical area is this area of operational efficiency and innovation. So we are expected as leaders to optimize the operational processes, to reduce the costs and improve productivity, while we're also fostering the innovation and maintaining a competitive edge. And that is table stakes, right? These operational metrics, you might think about them in terms of productivity improvements or productivity per person, for example, right, in sort of a sales metric, cost reductions, time to market for new products, innovation outputs, that would be product launches, it might be patents filed. And then if we think about customer value, right? Boards and CEOs expect leaders to enhance value for stakeholders, including customers, shareholders, employees, the community. Leaders have to balance that short term performance with long term creation, right? This is the kind of the like in the business, on the business,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And we think about that in terms of, NPS scores or market reputation, shareholder return, but all those things come into delivering value for the company. Now, let's talk about the common trap of conflating activity with value.
Mm-hmm.
Many leaders think that if they're busy, that means that they're delivering value. They must be productive, right? You fill up your calendars in back to back meetings, send dozens of emails, tick off the endless to do lists. But being busy is not the same as being valuable. And all of us at some point in time in our career have got caught in that trap.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so easy to get caught in the business trap. And I've seen so many leaders who think that they're driving value just because they're constantly in motion, meeting after meeting from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. And, it's interesting on how that can happen, though. However, there are often engaged in low impact activities when they're doing this, tasks that do not significantly move the needle for their organization as well. And so, for example, spending hours in meetings, as we were just mentioning, that could be sent in an email or maybe even getting lost in administrative details that could be delegated. There are so many different things that you should ask. What's the value I'm bringing in this meeting? How am I moving the company forward with their goals? And am I actually contributing in this meeting? So many times people are in meetings and they're just not even contributing. So, as I always say, if you're in a meeting and you're just nodding your head, you shouldn't be in that meeting. You either contribute, make sure you're
Um,
driving forward with the value, or go do something else that's going to drive value.
I know. How many times have you been in a meeting and you've got 50 people on the call? 50. Everyone's multitasking because no one's even on camera. And there's only like 10 people that are actually engaged in the conversation.
Yeah, yeah,
Crazy. I think that's just such a great example, Stacey, honestly. But for us as leaders, it's about understanding which activities truly drive value, right? So, one way to do this is asking ourselves, is this task contributing to my key goals? Is it enhancing our team's performance? Or is it creating meaningful outcomes? And if the answer to any of those questions is no, it might be time to reevaluate your priorities.
Yeah, I love that approach. And it's always helpful to regularly audit your time. And some people say, well, I don't have time to audit my time. Well, you need to make the time because you'll actually find the time to do that, right? So look back at your week and assess how much of your time was spent on high value activities versus the low value ones. I actually was at a conference the other day, and there was somebody talking about every week, literally every week for the last 3 years, this individual has looked at where have they done the last week? How much have they spent time, not only on their values in the company, but also their own personal beliefs and needs for them, and how it's the inside out approach. So they're looking at where am I spending my time and how am I bringing the most value to my life? And that includes the business too. So this awareness can be a game changer.
Yeah. And the part about that is really important is the sooner you learn that in your leadership career, the more successful you're going to be. So, you know, sometimes that wisdom sort of comes with experience. But no matter what stage you're on in your career, you know, these are the pivotal areas, the value areas that really will determine how successful you're going to be, right? So moving on, talking about that particular subject, and it's connected, but why are some leaders successful and some not? So, you know, in my experience, successful leaders are those who they're consistently delivering value because they have clarity of purpose, right? They know what their job is, they know what they need to do, and they know what is expected of them. Um, they are focused, and their energy is in the right areas and the right priorities. And they're not afraid. They're not afraid to say no to things that don't align with their job, with their goals, and with the objectives that have been laid out before them.
Yeah, that's so true. I think about leaders who built their success on a foundation of knowing what their organization truly needed and directing their
Yeah,
teams accordingly. That purpose piece is so important. And then on the other hand, there's leaders who struggle and often lack the clarity that they need, and they get distracted of every shiny object. We talk about that all the time. What's the shiny object, right? And how do people get distracted by that? Or the urgent task where you feel like you're giving value just because it's a rush thing and it might not necessarily be that way. So when you think about that, it dilutes your efforts if you don't have that purpose and that proper vision.
that's right. And it's not just about saying no to what doesn't matter, it's also about saying yes to what does. So, successful leaders invest in high impact areas where they're developing their people, they're innovating their products, or they're building strong customer relationships. They understand that leadership is not about doing everything, but about doing the right things.
Exactly. It is about accountability and holding
That's it.
yourself and your team accountable for delivering on those high value activities and outcomes. So interesting.
Yeah, it's so interesting, really. But it's really a great lesson for all of us. And I think this is an important discussion for our audience because uh, even if you have done that at times, you don't always stay in that lane,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
This is a
sometimes
reminder for everyone.
yeah, exactly. So, like, set the reset. Okay, set the reset. Staying focused on value priorities is easier said than done. It is, okay, because we get called into this, someone called, oh, we got a new project, we get called into that. One of the strategies I recommend is you've got to set yourself clear, measurable goals that are directly tied to the organization's strategic objectives. It allows you, then you've got a roadmap for what you need to focus on and avoid getting sidetracked because then you have measurable steps of what you're doing against those goals.
Yeah, I love that strategy. That's a good one. Another approach is to build daily habits that reinforce and focus on value. For instance,
Yeah.
start each day by identifying your top three priorities that you will have the most significant impact on. And at the end of the day, reflect on whether you spent your time on those priorities or got sidetracked by those urgent tasks or that meeting you needed to be in and other important things that felt important at the time.
I it's so true. I always find it helpful to use tools and metrics to track value creation. You could use key performance indicators, right? Where you're giving feedback to your team, to your stakeholders. And the key is to have a system, doesn't matter what the system's called, but to have a system that keeps you aligned with your value goals and what has to get done to meet them.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't forget to communicate these priorities clearly to your team. Sometimes we feel like we're communicating it, but we're not. So you need to say it multiple times and in different ways. And when everyone understands what's most important, it becomes easier to stay focused and aligned together.
Yeah. And this is something Stace and I do a lot of coaching on as well, because there's always this reset, right? And again, this is subject for another day, but there are so many tips and tricks to getting this right, and we can address those. What I want to do now, though, is Stace, let's talk about this balancing between these high value tasks and the low value activities. This was something actually, if you recall, we had the prioritization go no go
Yep,
in our Leadership Navigator book,
that's
and
right.
there's reason for that, right?
Yep.
As leaders, we have all those tasks that need to get done, but they may not directly add value, right? So you think about administrative duties or routine check-in; they don't add value.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a really great point. One strategy is to delegate effectively. you know, so when I think about when I'm delegating effectively, you need to identify the tasks that others can handle and empower your team to take ownership as well. This frees you up to focus on high value activities that only you can do. So you have to make sure that the person is skilled for it, but also now they feel empowered when they're skilled for it. And now you can do those things. And sometimes it's hard to let go, but it's so important that you do that.
Yeah, delegation's a whole nother subject.
Yeah.
Again,
Another future
this is
episode.
a massive trap, right? Trap delegation. But it's also about time management, right? Creating time blocks for high value activities. And I say time blocks, right? Because these things are big and you can't fit them into smaller little, you can't fit it into 30 minutes. It's not going to work. And batching those low value tasks together to minimize the disruption. So I think about it in terms of how are you being intentional with your time?
Yeah, so true. And we talk about this regularly assessing, but that is another tip to regularly assess these necessary, I say in quotes, activities, right? Sometimes processes can be streamlined or automated, and you might find that certain tasks aren't really necessary after all.
That's right. So just to recap, delivering value as a leader means focusing on the actions that drive the most impact, not filling your time with activity. It's about defining what value means in your context, avoiding the busyness trap, staying aligned with your priorities, and effectively balancing the necessary tasks.
Absolutely. And first, make the time to audit your time to understand where you're spending it. Set clear goals, measurable goals, that's aligned with the value as well. And third, build daily habits to keep you focused on what matters most. And leaders need to demonstrate to blend the financial acumen, the strategic foresight, and effective people management, operational expertise, and a strong commitment to stakeholder value. All of that needs to be balanced. And these indicators help boards and CEOs assess whether their leaders are effectively driving the organization's mission and objectives.
That's right. So if you come back to, the subject, how how are you how are leaders successful and some are not successful? So for all of you in the audience and our community, you know, leadership mastery is really, really critical for success, right? You didn't get into leadership because you didn't love it. You wanted to be in leadership. So take this advice and listen to sort of the practical tips that we've given you today of just how to hack it, right? Because it is really easy to get caught in the trap, isn't it, Stacey? It's so easy to
So
get caught in this
easy.
trap.
So easy.
Yeah, yeah. So, with that, we hope you found today's discussion valuable and that it helps you reset, rethink how you approach your daily leadership activities. And remember, leadership isn't about being busy, it's about being impactful.
Yeah, thank you for joining us today. And remember, activity does not mean progress. So make sure you're auditing that time and you're building value for sure.
Yeah, that's right. And, again, together, we can make a difference. So keep at it.
And that concludes another episode of Leadership Moments. We hope you found inspiration and valuable insights in what we shared today. Remember, leadership is not defined solely by titles or positions, but by the choices we make and the moments that shape us.
Embrace the challenges that come your way, for they may be the very moments that propel you toward greatness. We'd love to hear your thoughts and stories as well. Connect with us on our website at leadershipmomentspodcast.com or through social media on Instagram at Tracy_Ann Palmer.
And Stacey Castor _. Remember, your leadership moment could be just around the corner, waiting for you to seize it. This is Stacey Castor, and what doesn't challenge you won't change you.
And this is Tracy Ann Palmer. And be the change you wish to see in the world.